Hey everyone, super excited to be back. We took a little bit of a hiatus over the 4th of July weekend. It was Canada Day weekend here too, but I couldn't think of a better person to come back with, I guess our I call it season 2 of 2021 of Founders. Christina, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Danielle. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm super excited to have you. It's we had a couple of minutes to chat. I think it was at Ecom World, and we got, we had like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm like, I need a much more time with you to go through the whole story. And I will say, I'm pretty sure my first or second week when I started working with the Clearcoat team, I've heard the name Farmgirl Flowers in the company and all the amazing things you've done and your amazing story. So I just want to say, thank you for doing what you do. First off, you're inspiration to a lot of people here at the company. I'm sure a lot of people watching as well.
Oh, thank you. I am definitely not very succinct, so that's why you need more time to talk to me, because I tend to be long-winded, and I'll try to keep my talking to a minimum here so we can get through more questions. But Clearco has been amazing. It's been the first true, I feel, financial partner that I've had, and I've been doing this for 11 years. So I mean that from the heart. I actually feel like you guys are friends, which I've never said about a bank or anything ever. So I'm very much a big fan of yours as well.
That's amazing. No, thank you. Well, when I never really got to start, and really when I do a lot of these conversations, is the true origin stories of all of our great founders. And we tried to piece together as much as we could from research, but it's always better to hear it from you. And it all sounded like you had this entrepreneurial bug or drive as you grew up. And from what I was reading, you grew up in a soybean farm in Bremen, Indiana. Mm-hmm. Tell us a bit about what that was like.
Yeah, I hated it at the time. I was like, how did I land here? Like what? I think my parents felt the same way. They were like, how in the world did we get this kid? I was always, I always worked. I worked many jobs. I was always saving to try to get off the farm. And now looking back on it, I have so much appreciation. So I should say that from the start. Like, I don't want to sound like a bratty kid that's like, can't wait to get off the farm. I am so appreciative of that upbringing now, because I think it's helped me so much in what I do now. From the main thing is just, the hard work, like the work ethic that is instilled in you at a very young age that I think is just really kind of missing a little bit anymore. And so I think, the resilience came from that, the resilience and grit. But yeah, I grew up on a corn and soybean farm in town of 4,600 people, 2 stoplights, about 30 miles south of South Bend, Indiana would be the closest, where Notre Dame is. Mm-hmm. But really just, a very farm centric, agriculture town. And, hated that I didn't live in town. I was several miles out of town, and just, really also grew up with very specific gender roles. It was the time, it was the place. It's how, my parents were doing the best they could with what they had. So I'm not saying anything against them at all. It's just how they were raised. And so it's what they knew. And so, I had a younger brother that was always in the cards for him to go to college. But my sister and I were just like, you're just supposed to get married and have kids. That's the trajectory of your life. And that didn't really fit for me. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? And so all I knew was I needed to leave there. So I just worked a lot of jobs, from corn detasseling and lots of babysitting before I was of age to working at like every fast food restaurant in every nearby town, riding my little motor scooter, down the highway 12 miles away. I can't believe my parents let me do that, at 3:30 in the morning to go open a Burger King, and stuff like that before going into school. And then I'd go close down Arby's after school. So I worked a ton to save up money that I hid in little tin cans all over the farm so my brother and his friends wouldn't find it. And just can't make this stuff up, right? And so saved up enough money. And 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I moved to New York City just so I could see what was out there. And that was kind of the first eye-opening, like, whoa, there's more people in my apartment building than in my whole town growing up. But it was wonderful to see what was out there. And then I just, I didn't go to college then. So my story is very different than most people. They're like, oh, yeah, I went to Harvard and then I went to Stanford MBA and then I got, this investor and, from Sand Hill Road to invest in me. And mine is the opposite story of that. I have a high school education. I wanted to start a company. And so I did. I knew it needed to be bootstrapped. I thought I would be able to raise capital. But after 104 no's, I've come to the conclusion that that's a waste of time. And, just focus on bootstrapping it, kind of kicking it old school, like not spending more than you make, which is really hard to do sometimes.
Right. I wanted to touch on a bunch of things. I'm actually also very curious of how everyone's, how they got either their first job or started their first, company / side hustle, selling whatever. Outside of, I assume you're probably working on the farm at one of these earlier jobs, but like outside of your family or that community, what was the first job you got and how did you get that job?
Yeah, I think it was corn detasseling because you could do that at 12.
Right.
And so you literally would like pull the tassels off corn, either on if you were lucky and it wasn't too rainy, you could like be on this big contraption that's pulled behind a tractor to do it. But unfortunately that summer we had a lot of rain. And so it was just like traipsing through muddy fields and like reaching up and slicing your hands all up and pulling the tassels off. But you didn't need a work permit because it was seasonal labor. And it was hard work and you got paid, I think, $4 an hour or something like that crazy.
But did you seek that out or was that like through your parents, like you should go work? Like what? Because not every 12-year-old, I remember me, a 12-year-old, like that was not the thing that I was craving to go do was I'm going to go hang out on a field and just beat myself up for 12 hours a day.
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. My parents never encouraged me to work. That was all self-motivation because I knew I always, keep the kind of thought in my head of like, where am I going and how am I going to get there? And so that was like, where am I going? I need money to get there. So that's what I'm going to do. So it was complete self-motivation, but also there was also, I joke about it with my mom a lot lately and when all of my friends were super excited when summer break came, I'm like, what are they so excited about? Like, I know every morning I have to be up by 7:30 in the morning and there's a long list on the refrigerator of everything I need to get done that day. So like, that's not fun. That's way more than 8 hours of work, And so if I didn't do it, I was just going to work on the farm for free. So might as well go get paid for it somewhere else. And so it was that. And then also, I grew up not having a lot. So, we used to get $50 for, school clothes and books and stuff. And that was it. And so, we would go to like resale shops and stuff like that. But if I wanted anything over and above that, I need to buy it myself. And I've always loved fashion and I loved like being able to buy my own clothes and more, than just what I could get at St. Vincent de Paul. So yeah. I knew if I wanted more than that, I needed to be able to earn it myself.
And so after that, and it sounds like many, many, many jobs, too many to count, you end up in New York. And again, I don't know if I got this point right, was acting the thing that drew you there, or was I went to New York and then stumbled upon that as a career? Tell me more about that story.
Yeah, I went there for acting. I think, honestly, looking back on it, I think I just didn't know what else to do. We had a TV with like 5 stations on it. And I was like, well, I could do that. Like there was never any conversations about like what my sister and I, like what we wanted to do. Cause it was just, like I said, it was just very gender rolled. You just get married and have kids. And so there was no discussions about like, what do you want for your life and what careers interest you or anything like that. And I know my parents feel terrible about that now, and it's not their fault at all. Like I said, this is how they were raised. And so I don't want to sound like I'm being harsh on them because I'm not. I just, you can't be what you can't see. And we didn't see anything else around us. We went to church 3 times a week. It's very gender rolled church. I actually got kicked out of church when I was 17 for asking too many questions, a stumbling block to others. I mean, it was like very much like I was that kid that questioned everything. It was like, this doesn't seem right to me. So, I think that, I went to New York for acting. Honestly, I was looking at like California or New York, and I wrecked my car my senior year of high school. And I'm like, well, looks like it's New York. Literally, I made the decision of New York over California was because I didn't need a vehicle in New York, and I didn't want to spend the money on it on a new vehicle. So that's how I made the decision. I went to an acting school there for a summer program, found out that there were like a zillion other people that wanted to be actors. And, saw these, our teachers in that class were like amazing. And most of them were like, the biggest credit they had was like a soap opera 10 years ago or something like that. And I was like, I don't want to be 50 and still trying to make my dream. I'm a creative person, but I'm also a realist. And I was like, am I going to be better than these people? Probably not. So I think I probably need to get a plan B together. So, that's why I went to New York, but it didn't stick.
Yeah. What's interesting is and I'm sure there's no real correlation, but acting is a very common, at least in the conversations I've had, as a starting point for founders. So the CEO of Barry's Bootcamp, he was an actor out of LA, and that didn't end up working out for many reasons, and that's what got him into the studio, and he eventually bought in to that business. And the founder of Andy Swim, she was on the production side, like creating short films. Mentioned one of our other portfolio companies, Jennifer Yen, who runs a company called Pure Lease, and she was a villain on the Power Rangers.
Wow.
So you're part of the alumni group of actors, actresses that started amazing companies.
I mean, it does give you thick skin, right? And you have to have really thick skin to be a founder, because people will say all kinds of things about you, and you never make anybody happy, it seems like. So you just have to be okay with it. So maybe there's part of it with that resilience and like grit and like really thick skin.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. So you're in New York, and then it sounds like you jumped around a little bit. There's a stint in Chicago, and then you ended up going to the West Coast, where you are now, to work for a startup. What, once you saw acting is just not for me, you sounds like you're also someone with a plan. What was the plan at that point?
Yeah, the plan was to live somewhere with a lower cost of living. So that's why I moved to Chicago. New York, I was working 3 jobs, 7 days a week. I didn't have a single day off. I had one day where I only worked one job, but so I needed one where I wasn't, just working 3 jobs to pay my rent and subway, fare. So I moved to Chicago because it was cheaper, honestly, but it was still a big city feel. And I started working at a hotel there, and learned very quickly that if you just work hard, if you have good work ethic and are intellectually curious, you can go really far in hospitality. You don't need an education. So I moved up very quickly. Then I started opening hotels for a hotel company that I worked for. And that's kind of how I ended up in San Francisco. I actually ended up in San Francisco for a guy. It's a real story. But we both worked for the same company that was based there. And so I came out and ran 2 small boutique properties in San Francisco. And it was during the .com era, number 1. I was back in 2000. And it was the most magical thing to me, because I was out in the city where, houses were painted pastel colors, and it just felt like a fairy tale a little bit to me. And back then, now it's a little bit different. And it was, everybody was creating something. Like everybody was like, I'm disrupting the toothbrush, I'm disrupting socks. Like everything was like being disrupted. And I talked to people, and I was just amazed by how creative everyone was, and how everybody was starting companies. And it was the first time ever in my life where I thought, wow, I could do that. Like before that, I'd never thought that I could do that. Where I grew up, the success equaled middle management at a large corporation. Like if you could be, the people that I remember thinking were successful were like, probably middle tier management at large companies, manufacturing companies that make RVs where I'm from and things like that. But they didn't own companies. Nobody owned companies. Like that was like a myth in my head of like, those have to be rich people that own companies. And they must be passed down from generation to generation or something. I just had never even thought there was a possibility of me starting a company until I came to San Francisco and saw that everybody was starting companies. And it didn't really seem to matter what their background was. Now I know differently, because if you're going to get funded, you have to have the pedigree. And I didn't have that pedigree. But from the outside looking in, it seemed more equitable, and it seemed like something I could do.
And Jenny, you actually ended up joining a startup of some sort back then.
Yeah, I did. It was on its way down already. It was entertainment. It was basically, I don't think that the business model ever had any way to make money, but still got a bunch of investment, because that's the way it was in 2000, 2001. So it was already on the kind of downward spiral, death spiral down. And so by the time I joined, it was like in layoff mode, like major layoff mode. So I helped lay off a lot of people. It then turned into this record label because there was this like sub-brand, subsidiary, like, ancillary brand that they had that was spinning off a little bit of money, but then the CEO was still spending money like it was this big startup that had millions of dollars of funding. And so that very quickly fizzled out as well. But I got to see from the inside, it was like the cool, it's in a loft and there's a ping pong table and everybody's cool and wearing like wrinkled clothes that they didn't even wash. And you know what I mean? It was everything you can think of what 2001 was. And very different from very kind of stodgy hotel management that I was used to before that.
Very, very different. I mean, so did you know going into it, the situation, that it was like a tough, or did you figure, like, because really the question I'm getting at is like, why jump into that?
Yeah.
You feel like you really enjoy, it's like, let me just pick the more difficult thing.
I do that in everything in life. I do it in everything. I take the hardest route. Like, who starts a perishable product company that needs cold chain inbound, expedited shipping outbound? Like, you know what I mean? Who does
easy
that?
problems?
Who does that? Yeah. So I picked the hardest route and everything. Yeah, I knew that they were in trouble, but of course, I'm, back then in my early 20s, being like, I can solve any problem in the world, like I can't, but it was fun to get to see that side of things. And I learned a lot from it. Every job I've had, I've learned so much from and can take so much from. And I actually think I've basically earned 10 MBAs at this point in life. And maybe someday someone will like Oprah me and I'll get like a fake one. But I just think that I still believe fully that, education is just how you choose to learn. And I chose to learn it differently through a lot of really hard jobs and books, of course, but everything I've taken something really valuable that's helped me today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you learned so much as a founder, or even being at a startup, that you won't be exposed to anywhere. I think really it's the people side of things, especially at the time too. If you're in a company where you're laying off a lot of people, like those are tough conversations to have that school will never teach you that. Sales, nope. School never teach you that.
Never. I still think everybody will hate me for saying this, but I often wonder if just better than getting an MBA, take the same amount of money, which is now like what, $200,000, $250,000, $300,000. Take that. I started my company with $49,000. I could have started, 5 or 6 companies with the same amount of money. One of them is going to hit probably out of 5 or 6, hopefully. I mean, that's still like half a chance of what real numbers are, but chances are I can make one hit out of that 5 or 6 and probably learn more than going and sitting in a classroom. But if you're that type of learner like me, and it seems to be a lot of founders learn more hands-on than in books anyway.
Yeah. It's just the personality type, I guess. And so you're kind of getting to the start of Farmgirl Flowers, but before we get to that, it sounds like you're now you take a job at Stanford in one of their departments. And I remember reading somewhere else, like, I took all these jobs with the intention I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to start something. I'm going to work on this on the side. Before Farmgirl Flowers, what was the idea just before that, or the idea before that you had tried and, just didn't get the traction or was not interesting? What are some of those highlights or lowlights of what you tried?
Yeah, I mean, I had an idea book with me at all times that I would jot down ideas. Like, I still do it all the time. It drives everybody nuts. I'm like, last week with some friends and diapers and how we needed to duct tape. I'm like, what about duct tape diapers? Like, I think like there'd be a whole, like, from the Duck Dynasty fans, they would love that. I mean, like, everything in life still to this day, I'm like, what if we do this? And then I'm like looking up like, dirtyduckies.com. Is that URL open? And, I own 270 some URLs or something. So I still do it to this day, come up with ideas for everything. Some are really silly and stupid and some are great. I think, but some of them right before that I was exploring and researching, because that's what I did on weekends. I would just like research, go down rabbit holes of research based on these ideas I'd have during the week. And some were like, there was one called iSoiree that was a web set of tools for event planners where you could use the same schematics from event spaces, so you don't have to recreate them all the time, and then send out bids to vendors. And that's how we would monetize it, by taking a % of those. There's now platforms like that exist, but back then, back in 2009, when I was doing, looking into that as an idea, it wasn't something that existed. There was Guy Check, which was from my experience of online dating and how much was not true. And so it would take public domain information and tell you what percentage likelihood the information he gave you was accurate, based on, and it would tell you like, oh, well, doesn't look like there's public domain divorce papers for this person. So it doesn't look like they're actually divorced. It looks like they might still be married or things like that. But it would tell you like, you have a 72% likelihood that this information is correct based on the statistics. You could even take like census statistics based on it, because we actually got in a little bit of, it evolved because at first it was public domain information. Then it went to census information on likelihood because every state has their information differently. And so uploading that was going to be a, impossible task. So like these were just a few of the many. There was iron-on pockets called pockets for women's suits, because none of them had pockets, which is why I love Argent now, that makes women's suits with pockets in them. But back then that didn't exist. And so I would like come to my Monday night girls night and I'd be like, hey, you guys, I need you to try these, beta test these that I made literally on my coffee table with, fusing tape and stuff and neoprene patches to put inside their suits and have them test it. So I was that guy with the question mark all over his suit that was on infomercials back in the 90s. If you remember, you're probably too young, but it's like, are you an inventor? That was me.
That's amazing. Well, that's so funny because if you look at the era of a lot of the products created back then, I think everything's just branded a lot better now. And some of it was legitimately like very good products, right? And it just never got the light of day back then. So it's I'll pull up some of these from the comments. We actually have a former actor here, and he's like, he'd pay for one of those ideas. So
thank you.
Development happening on the fly.
I would too, right?
Exactly. And so with all this experimentation, what stood out to you about Farmgirl Flowers that made you quit your job and then also take almost 50 grand out of your bank account with no steady income to be like, this is 100% the thing that I'm going to actually bet on. Whereas the other ideas, didn't stick out as much.
It was a couple things. So Farmgirl Flowers was the first idea I had that checked all the boxes. So there's one really good thing. I'm kind of disappointed in myself that it took me 10 years to start a company. Like if I had a regret that when people say they have no regrets, I'm like, whatever, I have so many regrets in life, so many. I wish I could go back and not work 7.5 years at Stanford. Because I thought, to your point, I thought when I started that job there, that it was going to be, as head of catering. I was like, well, I managed hotels. It was so many more departments than one. I could, I can do this and start a company on the side, but I never do that. And I think that that's probably the case for a lot of entrepreneurs. I hear a lot of people are like, you need to, be a weekend entrepreneur and start something while you're working, because then you'll have a steady paycheck. But we're all like crazy type A, right? Like, so I feel like I'm a chill type A, but I'm still crazy type A, right? You're going to at least I turned every 40-hour-a-week job into 80 hours because I treated it like it was my own company. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to just do that. I want to like double the numbers. And what if I did this? And then, and so it never was a 40-hour-a-week job. It was always 80 hours. I never had time. And so then it would just grow. And then I would also, because I think if you have the personality type to start a company, you're probably going to do really well, right? And I think that's a hardship too when you start a company, is that you don't have anybody telling you good job anymore. But at Stanford, I was like, everyone's like, great job, because you're like killing it, right? Because you made it your own company basically. And so, you get all these accolades and you just grow really quick into other positions and get promoted and it feels great. And so it's just very easy to make something that was supposed to be 2 years into 7.5 years. And I wish that hadn't been the case. But the really great silver lining to it taking me 10 years to figure out that I needed to start a company and do it finally, and really to all of my friends and family's relief that I would stop coming up with 4 ideas a week that I'd run by them, was that it gave me 10 years to figure out what the company should be and what I needed it to be, basically. So if I'd started any of those 4,000 ideas I had along the way in that 10-year period early on, they probably wouldn't have been a viable company. So I had boxes that I needed to check. See, I'm not succinct at all. All that to get to the original question of why this one. I wanted it to be truly innovative. And a lot of the ideas I had were just, riffing on someone else's idea, but making it a tiny bit better, And I was like, no, if I'm going to really go for it. I want to do something so different. And that's what Farmgirl was. And now you don't know it because there's so many other competitors in the space that have taken inspiration from us that look very similar to us, but I'm not saying they copied us, so nobody sue me, okay? But might have taken some inspiration from us. But back in 2010, nobody was doing less is more. The minimum option, number of options on our competitors' websites was 169. So they were just doing so many options. And so when I launched, we just had one option. You get my daily bouquet and that's it. We've now expanded it and it's more, but it's still about 20% of what a lot of our competitors have on their sites. So it was innovative. Now it doesn't look as innovative because everyone else looks kind of similar in the space, but we were the first to market there and we did it really well. And so that was the first box. Needed to be innovative, needed to be something completely new. If I'm going to swing for the stands, I want it to, be something really cool and innovative. And then I wanted it to do something good in the world. There's nothing wrong with selling toilet paper, especially post-pandemic. Now I'm like, why didn't I start a toilet paper company? But, I wanted it to be like, originally we were only buying American grown flowers. And so agriculture, where I come from, is king. And so I really wanted to help local agriculture. I did find that I was very naive and we ran out of flowers very quickly. And some of the stories that I learned about local agriculture might not have been the full story. And so, but I get to create a company that is good and does good things for the environment, for its people, for our vendors. And so that was another box I wanted to check. A big one was that I knew it needed to be bootstrapped. And this eliminated 95% of all the companies I came up with, because I knew at that point, that I would not be able to go down to Sand Hill Road and say, hey, I know I didn't work at any of the big tech companies. I know I don't have any fancy education, but just trust me, I'm not going to lose your money, And they wouldn't just be like, sure, here you go. Yeah. So I knew that I needed to at least be able to bootstrap for a couple of years and prove out the concept first. And most of my ideas needed a lot of capital, like that I Swear I Won needed, $2 million in capital to build the platform, need a lot of engineering, money. And so Farmgirl was the first idea I had that I could bootstrap because we had a robust flower market in San Francisco. I could go there and just buy small quantities, which I couldn't have done if I was like in Minnesota or something. So where I was at definitely helped with this idea be able to come to fruition without having to raise capital.
And what did that the V0.1 look like? So how did you sell the first flowers and where did you get them from?
Yeah, on our 10-year anniversary, I sent out a screenshot of our first website to our whole team. And I'm like, see how far we've come. I think we were a perfect example of minimum viable product for the lean startup, because the picture I took, actually my then boyfriend that became my husband, now my ex-husband, long 10 years, took the picture of me in this barn in Pescadero, California. We just drove down there with some buckets of flowers, but it wasn't even in focus. It was blurry, the photo. And so it was, the whole background was this blurry barn picture.
Amazing.
It was horrible. It very much looked like Living Social, that old website, where it was like it seemed very cool and on trend then. But now, I should send it to you. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. So, and it was one product. You get one of our hand-tied bouquets either in a recycled vase, which I thought was a brilliant idea because everybody has all these vases that sit above their refrigerator and we need to reuse those. That was the worst idea in the world. You cannot scale that way. Every vase has a different size opening. You can't make anything consistently, you can't scale that. And so I found that I had this vase recycling program, and I was like, wait, I'm spending 4 hours a day going and driving around to pick up vases to then go drop them off at Goodwill because there's no way I'm using these ugly vases with like 6-inch openings that would take $300 to fill. Horrible idea. So that, or you got it wrapped in our signature and trademark burlap wrap, which was upcycled coffee bags, which was an idea I had when I was trying to create a brand around our product, which hence you see other people copying that. We did lose a lawsuit with our trademark with that, but we were the originals that did that with burlap wrap, and we still do to this day.
Yeah, always the innovator, even from day one. Yeah. And so the story that I really enjoyed, and I hope you don't mind repeating again, was the early customer acquisition strategy. Mm-hmm. The very high-tech Starbucks strategy.
Yes. So high-tech.
Yeah, tell us more about that. It's honestly one of my most favorite stories I've ever heard about how, and not only because you just did it, but it was like a legit sales channel for many years.
Yeah, for 2 years, our entire marketing spend was taking flower arrangements around to coffee shops around the city. We were only in San Francisco at that point. And by we, I always say the royal we, it was me, I would sometimes.
Every good founder is we.
Yeah, totally, we from my dining room. So take flower arrangements. They cost about $20 it cost to make. And got Starbucks was our best venue for this. We had some other independent coffee shops as well, but I have to say, like, this is why I'm so loyal to Starbucks even to today, because that was 100% of our marketing spend, putting these little $20 arrangements out with little marketing cards I made that cost about a third of a cent a piece. And then I'd put them out in this little 99-cent business card holder in front of it. And placement was really important. So they would let me put it right on the bar where you'd wait for your drink. And so I make them small enough to fit in that little alcove, like where you're waiting for your drink. And I would go back every week and I'd count how many cards were taken. So it was very important. If there was only 10 or 20 cards taken, I was like, this one's not worth it. I need to find another one in this neighborhood. And now I'm like, that's amazing for $20 to get even 10 people to potentially buy. But back then I was like, no, it needed to be minimum of like 40 or 50. And some of them, the downtown ones, be 200 cards a week were taken. It was incredible. And so all of our growth, we did $56,000 the first year in revenue to 276 the second year. And then the third year went to 920. And that was all without any additional spend. So we got to almost $1 million with coffee shop bouquets being our entire marketing spend. That, and I would go to networking events. Meetup was really big back then. And so I'd go find all the meetups downtown and I would take any leftover flowers I had, because I had to get a minimum of 6 orders a day to use all my flowers up. And I didn't have 6 orders a day when I first started. So I would use all the leftover flowers and I would take them to these meetup events, and the bigger ones that were in hotel ballrooms and stuff like that. And I would just pretend that somebody had ordered them, and I'd put them out on the registration table, and I would always just fake it. And I'd just be like, oh yeah, here's the flowers. I'm sorry, I'm a couple of minutes late delivering them. And I put them out with cards next to them, and nobody ever told me not to put them there. And, and I put little flags that had our name on it and stuff. So everybody knew it was Farmgirl Flowers and the little cards next to it. And that was all the marketing I did for the first 2.5 years.
That's crazy to build $1 million business.
Yeah.
And it's we were on another talk with one of our other companies, a guy named Kevin Gould, who has a couple of businesses, and his 2021 version of that is like, oh, you need to slide in the DMs of all the customers that follow you. And like, imagine you could do that. Imagine you could have done that 10 years ago.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And we were lucky when Facebook marketing started. We were really early, really, really early. And my then husband, he worked at Facebook. So that helped a lot, where he was, because I remember us having so many fights. My first financial model had 24 cents allocated for marketing budget per unit. Yeah, 24 cents. And he's like, what are you smoking? Like, there's no way. And I was like, are you kidding me? How much do you think I should be spending on marketing? That's like people I could hire, And so I was always operations side of things. So I was like, that's ridiculous. I can't do that. I can't, what, how much, with like zeros behind it. And so we'd have all these like debates, but we started really early on Facebook, and that we were able to acquire a customer for under $1 for a very long time, like
Wow.
for over a year. And so, it allowed us to just spend like $10,000 a month and still have huge growth numbers, which right now I have marketing turned off for us because it's costing too much to acquire a customer, because consumer goods are so soft right now that people are spending their money on travel right now. We're in the summer months. So I just turned it off, because I talked to a bunch of my fellow CEOs that are in consumer goods as well. And they're telling me how much it's costing them on digital channels. And they're all funded and I'm not. And I'm like, I can't afford to spend close to $100 for them. It's, costing us 47, but still that's too much for us to acquire a customer right now in digital channels. So we just turned it off, and we're like, okay, we'll slow down our growth if we need to. But it's better than losing money on every order. For us, we can't do that being bootstrapped where they can when, they have investors behind them. So, we spend on digital when we can, but it's definitely more than $1.
A bit more. It's got a bit more expensive.
Yeah.
There's lots to dig to on the funding side and the marketing side. But one thing I didn't want to lose was you had mentioned your learnings on suppliers. And I think when I was reading it in 2012 is when you eventually got a large scale commercial supplier, but there's this period of 2 years where it sounds like you learned a lot, and what you ran out of flowers, which is the certainly a concerning thing to deal with, given that's how you make all your money. What attracted you to the local sourcing model, and what do you end up learning through that made you switch out of it?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest learnings I've had, and I think a good example for people to know, like another regret I have that I would change if I could go back, is I would have changed our model much sooner than I did. And I didn't because of basically fear. I was afraid of what our consumers would say, that they would think we sold out. And I also, when things don't work, I always want to prove I can make it work, even when I shouldn't. I should just throw in the towel. And that's a problem. But so, when I first started, one of the biggest mistakes I made was moving into the San Francisco Flower Mart. So when my landlord found out that I was running an illegal business from my apartment, turns out garage startup isn't legal. Okay. Like, it's ridiculous. I would like to change the law on this, but it's not legal. And he was a corporate attorney. So I got the slip on the door that says, of your rent controlled apartment, which in San Francisco is like basically worth its weight in gold, that you either need to move out or your company needs to move out, and you have 2 weeks to do it. So I had and we weren't making money at that point. It was just exactly 2 years in. Meaning I wasn't making any money at that point. And it was a big leap of faith. Like, now I have to move out and I have to afford rent on top of it, when I'm not even, like, I'm still burning money out of that $49,000. So I had to move out. I had to move out quick. And so I moved into the San Francisco Flower Mart, where I was buying my flowers. They had an empty stall there, they call it. And it was cheaper. It was $1,100 a month. It was way cheaper than the other places I was looking at. But it was one of the worst decisions I could have made, because what that did is it put a bullseye on our head. Basically, everybody in the industry in San Francisco in the Bay Area, got to see our growth. And people don't like that when they see that you're growing way faster than them. And so we became like the most hated flower company in the world, basically. And the wholesalers there, because they're not actually mostly growers, they're wholesalers there that have been in business generations, right? They blackballed us. So they would call growers and say, if you sell to Farmgirl Flowers directly, we're going to cancel our accounts. And they've been buying for 20 years from this grower, right? From the guy that's running it now, his dad or his grandpa. And so it blackballed us, and people would not sell to us. And I'm still, like, until last year, we were still dealing with that. COVID changed things because everybody needed us. And then the same people that wouldn't sell to us. But then I would find they were selling to our male-owned counterparts that were younger companies than us. And, with one of the largest farms in the United States, I had to threaten a gender discrimination lawsuit to get them to sell to me. So I'm like, look, there's no other reason other than they're funded or they're male. And neither one of those is a legal reason to not sell to me when you're selling to them. We still don't have as good of deals. Like, Whole Foods pays less than us on accounts where we're buying double what they are. And, it's just, I have to say, like, North American agriculture, floral agriculture, has not been wonderful to work in at all. It's been really hard. It's really slow to any kind of improvements or any kind of innovation. They looked at us like, I get it. They're like, these wholesalers have been buying for 20 years, and you are, this internet company that could be out of business tomorrow. Why are we going to risk this relationship for years? I'm like, but this isn't legal. Like, this is like, to blackball us is not legal based on this. So it was rough. And if I hadn't moved into the Flower Mart, they never would have known who we were, but they knew because we were there. And so I wish I could take that back. But it made us run out of flowers very, very quickly, where we just couldn't get our hands on enough flowers. And they were also holding us ransom to prices that were not okay. They just were not okay. So, when I have growers literally calling us up the week before Mother's Day and saying, well, actually, I can only give you 20% of what I promised for next week, unless you pay double per stem. And then I would say, like, that's extortion. Like, that's not okay. And they would say, well, you need our flowers. You have to buy American grown. I know there's no more roses out there. There's only 6 of us out there, and you're buying from all of us. So it was stuff like that where I was just like, you know what? Why am I fighting so hard for an industry that is treating me like crap? And so I said, enough is enough. And that was 2016. We only received 19% of our confirmed orders the entire year. 19%. You cannot run a supply chain with 19%.
Yeah.
It was
That's an insane short ship. Like,
yeah. And what that means is then we'd have to go buy from wholesalers, which is why the wholesalers were blackballing us, because they could then charge us 30 to 40% more. And, we were like their biggest customer. We're probably buying like 80% of their product. And so it was in their best interest to do this, and then we'd have to buy from them. And then instead of having one recipe per size, we would have to have like 22 recipes, which operationally you can't scale that way. So there's this ripple effect of so many, inefficiencies that resulted from that. And so I just was like, screw it. You know what? I'm not going to run a business this way. And I went down to Ecuador. I met amazing farms, got connected to them through some friends in the industry that, to be honest, I mean, it's not apples to apples because it costs a lot more to run a farm in North America based on, I know that from like taxes and insurance and all the things you have to have here that you don't have to have the same in Ecuador, in South America. But they treat their teams so well and had such amazing values as a farm. And I'm like, I'm fighting with farms to even sell to me in North America. And these farms are like, well, your money's green. Cool. You know what I mean? And their values aligned with my own, which was the most important thing. And so we made the switch in January of 2017. And I'm so thankful I did, because we would have probably gone out of business in February for Valentine's Day, given how much of the local product we received. It was about 20% of what we confirmed orders with our North American farms that we received. And without South America saving us that Valentine's Day, I don't know if we could have survived it. So it was perfect timing. And when we told our customers, I was very transparent. I just wrote a letter, let our customers know that we were switching to, using both domestic and international product. This is why, and told them, I didn't really lean into the gender inequity that was very clear, because I didn't want it to become this like he said, she said thing. But it's there, and I talk about it more now. But what was amazing is I braced myself for you sold out, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't come. Even though we'd been on the Today Show and in the New York Times, and all this stuff with our local mission. And so I really thought it was going to be just this horrible negative onslaught of negativity directed our way. And it wasn't. It was overwhelmingly supportive, and people were just so happy that we told them why and didn't just do it and not tell people. And so that's the kind of the guiding principle that I've taken with every big decision and change that I've made at Farmgirl. I just tell our customers, I tell them really openly and honestly, what's going on. And I think it's really been the thing that has built our brand in the best way possible, is that, people, for the first time ever on our last survey that we did, people weren't buying from us for our product, which used to be that they just liked our flowers better than our competitors. They're buying from us because they like our brand. They like our company. And so they really feel like they're buying from people, which they are, instead of this glossy white, who is this behind the curtain type company, which is something we never want to be.
Yeah. No, it's really, it must have been such a stressful, January, switching to a new supplier, right before one of your biggest sales periods ever. I'm sure there are people who are watching this who are maybe thinking about similar changes in their sourcing and maybe are not comfortable sourcing from another country. What did you do to make sure that these partners you were picking in a new country, probably have language barrier? How did you vet them? What gave you the confidence that they were not going to repeat the same thing? What went through your head for others that might be thinking about making similar decisions?
Yeah, I went down there and met them personally and went to their farms. I'm not going to take what someone says in an email, as truth. So I went down and visited farms. South America is very familial. So it's they treat you as their family. You go and you stay with them a lot of times. You have dinner with their father and grandfathers. And, it's a very warm and welcoming community. And they welcome you to their farms. You can also go when they're not expecting you, which I still do. So you're not just seeing something that might be put in front of you, and we've been very selective about the farms that we work with in making sure that their values align with our own. We've also worked on programs with them, with our farms, on buying washers and refrigerators and things like that for team members, and doing payback programs with no interest and things like that. So their hearts are in the right place. They genuinely care about their teams, and it shows when you're down there with them and see it. So I think there's nothing better than going and seeing it with your own eyes. And so that's what I've done. I mean, we still have issues sometimes, and we make sure that we are following up to make sure that that the farms we're working with, I never want to be in a situation like the big companies you read about that are like, they're using sweatshops and things like that. We, never want to be in that position. So we make sure that we're not. I see with our eyes.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. In the last few minutes we have, I'd love to jump to present day and what I love in our conversation before is, as a business, someone who owns her entire business, you can talk to a lot of the growth that you've seen. And so for those watching, tell us, where has the business gone since 2012? How much growth have you seen? How much do you own of the business?
Yeah.
And there's some more questions after that.
Yeah. So I own 99.86%. I have an early employee that owns a tiny bit. And, working on an equity pool right now for team members that we will be bringing in. And for our team, I care more about profit sharing than equity, to be quite honest. I think that's better for your employees. So working on a profit sharing model as well for our team. I think it's, just based on statistics, everybody has this over glamorized view of equity, but if you look at like what it's actually worth for most companies, it's not huge. And so I think the best thing you can do as an owner is share your profits, like, with everybody that helps you get there. I can't run a $65 million company on my own. So I should be sharing that with my team. That's where we ended last year, about 65 million, a little over 65 million in revenue, still bootstrapped. And, hoping to get to the 100 million mark soon, not this year. We were hoping this year. This year's been challenging. To be really honest, this year's been way more challenging than last year for us. Last year was hard, and the fact that we were shut down in 12 hours and had to figure out how to, stand up more distribution centers and get more supply for the demand. But the demand was huge last year because, we had over 100% growth last year, and we turned off marketing for 10 months completely, except for emails. That's it. So to have 100% growth with no marketing, except for MailChimp, like some emails, is pretty incredible. But that's because nobody could be with people they loved. And so the gifting space really benefited. It feels a little gross saying that we benefited from the pandemic, but we did. It's just like when I would hear CEOs be like, we did such an incredible job. I'm like, well, yeah. And we were already set up as e-commerce, and people couldn't be with people they love. And so they were buying gifts. The gifting space really blew up last year. And we had 9.5 years of brand equity already built up from that too. So, yes, we did a good job of getting enough supply to meet the demand, but the demand was there. It wasn't something we did. Wasn't like a gold star on our company. So this year's harder because and I knew it was going to be, I said it over and over last year, like, next year's going to be tricky. I just kept saying next year's going to be tricky. And tricky was definitely not the right word for it.
An understatement slightly, maybe.
Yeah, way sold out about how hard this year is going to be. This year's definitely like, once I get through this year, I'm going to count it the biggest success of my life is just getting through this year. So we built up an infrastructure for this amazing growth last year. And then this year, as soon as vaccines became readily available, we saw exactly what I thought was going to happen. People are going to travel. They're going to be with people they love. They're not going to send gifts anymore, right? And so exactly in April when that happened, we started to see softened sales. And so, and I know most people won't talk about it because they have boards behind them being like, don't tell anybody that we have soft sales. Everyone has soft sales. You can tell by the 30% off emails that you're getting 3 times a day from all these e-commerce companies, right? That's why they're doing that. That's why we're doing more sales than normal, just keeping it real here, That's why we had to turn off marketing, our digital marketing, because we at $47 to acquire customers, because every other company is spending so much money and the auctions are so saturated right now. So, that tells you everything you need to know. Everybody's sales are soft. So they're soft, and summer's already it's the hardest time of year for us. And so the summer is going to be the most challenging time that we've ever had, I think, at Farmgirl to get through. And so we're having to make some big changes, and Clearco came through in a big way for us to help us with some capital to get through till fall. And sales will come back in full force, just like they do every year, once kids go back to school. And this year, people are, think of how many people in your life took 2 weeks off for July 4th. I have so many friends that I'm like, wait, when did July 4th become a 2-week off holiday? Like, how does that happen? So, I don't even remember what the question was, but this year's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So
no, you kind of open up another discussion we can have, at least the last few minutes we have, is I remember my own versions of this story with my own companies, where whether it's a target that has been set by a board or a target that you've personally committed to or a goal you want to hit, and you kind of see this, like, wow, the next few months is just going to be completely insane. I don't know how I'm going to hit this number, but I have to figure it out. What are some of the ideas, like when you saw it then and now, like what are the things you're trying and testing? And I'm asking this out of curiosity for your decision making, and also out of curiosity of maybe we have other ideas we can offer to help. But that's why I would just love to know, like, what's going on in your head. What are you putting into market to try to, reverse this trend until you get to hopefully, a strong Q4?
Yes, we will get to Q4. I'm resolute on that. Anything and everything I'm trying, basically. So, we did a customer survey to find out why people buy, or what's the barrier to entry to buying from us. Got some really good information from that, and it's definitely price sensitivity. People are very price sensitive right now. We always knew our shipping rates. We have $25 shipping rates. Like, I thought we would launch with $25, and I thought within a year we'd build up enough buying power to be able to reduce that. In fact, our subsidies have gone way up, especially with COVID. FedEx and UPS, due to them not delivering about 50% of our packages in February, they cost us $5.5 million. So we're still digging out of the hole from that $5.5 million, because they took away all of their guarantees that you would normally get your shipping rates back. But because of COVID, they were able to say, act of God, whatever, and not have to give you that back, which is really interesting because all their stock prices have more than doubled, and they all have billions of dollars more than anticipated revenues in their first quarter of this year alone. So they don't need to do that. They've just been able to do that. Sadly, that's a whole nother podcast, and would love to talk more about that with anybody who wants to talk about it. Because it's really not okay how large companies have been able to use COVID to their benefit financially, and then give their CFO a $575,000 bonus for exemplary leadership through COVID, which is taking those guarantees away. But okay, I'll go on to the next part of that. So we're trying everything we can. So based on that information, we launched a free ship shop. So, working with our farms on products that they're, flowers they're flush with, where we can get much better cost per stem. We can get our flower procurement costs down. We can then embed the shipping price into that. And we, within 4 days of having that idea, we launched a free ship shop on our website. And so that's been really successful. And it was just based on customer information from that survey. We've launched bulk flowers, since we're now into people are having weddings again and events. So as a way that people can DIY their own event flowers and a more reasonable cost. So we've launched bulk flowers. We've upped our preserved flower line, because now we're shipping in extreme heat. So already our reshipping rate goes about triple what it typically is during the year, because you're, delivering to Tempe, Arizona in a brown metal UPS van, where it's sitting on the van for like 8 hours straight. And then people think you sent them rotten flowers, but 170-degree temperatures. So preserved flowers, that doesn't happen with. So we're doing that. We're looking to potentially add an Amazon shop and things like that with some other, subsidiary lines and things like that, since there's already, people there shopping a lot with other products, not our regular lineup. We're just exploring everything right now to see how we can maximize revenues, giving people what they want. They want lower shipping rates. They want lower product prices. So we've launched a lot more lower designed bouquets, so it saves on labor, so we can get our price points down. We're just doing everything we possibly can.
Yeah, the wholesale is very interesting to me. That's very on trend for, it's still, people are going to be cost conscious if they're planning their wedding, this and that. It's almost it could turn to very interesting. It reminds me of some of the other companies I've spent time with. They're doing a lot of stuff on personal shopping and fashion, or personal styling. Or live selling. And so that could be a very interesting, have almost like a free florist, where it's like, hey, if you, buy this package, we will actually design your whole wedding for free, which is like probably a cost of someone just being on the phone for an hour. And then use that as a way to, and then just put it through Zola, put it through all the wedding venues.
And I hate weddings, but I'm definitely there with corporate sales. I love corporate sales. Weddings are just the highest touch customer ever. The fact that everybody goes after weddings, I'm like, highest touch, highest expectations. You have a perishable product. What if it ends up sitting on that truck for 8 hours?
Very small repair,
and you just ruined their wedding. Like,
Yeah.
Do that like one time and have that bride you're talking to, and you're like, I am so sorry. Like,
Just gotta just
tried to get on a plane to Chicago to come make your bouquet yourself. I just couldn't get there before your wedding started tomorrow morning. So
yeah, there's always a double-edged sword for all these things.
perishability, I would never do again. If I had one parting suggestion for anybody listening that's thinking of starting a business, don't start perishable product business. And I'm not saying that because I don't want competitors. It's just hard. It's so hard. I think anything I do after this is going to feel like a cakewalk compared to perishability.
That's why you start with the difficult things, and then the rest of life is easy, right?
It's like learning to drive on a stick shift, right?
hard, I think that was my favorite quote from somewhere. Hard decisions, easy life. That's
oh yeah.
easy decisions, hard life. Hard decisions, easy life. At some point. Some point. Well, in the last minute we have, you're going to crush 2021. We're happy to and proud to be along on the ride with you on that. When that's all said and done, and you have an amazing year, what else are you looking forward to, whether it's personally or with the business? What's, bucket list may not always be the right way I frame this question, but what are you excited about next?
I am really excited to get through this year. Like, I have nothing else on my brain except getting through this year. I think that the things we're doing right now that are really hard, like really, really hard. We're making some hard decisions that are not decisions that I ever would have thought that I would make, but they're the right decisions for the company. And it's, again, like moving to international flowers. We're changing our distribution model completely right now. Mm-hmm. And it's hard, and it's not what I wanted to do. It's making us, we're making our team much smaller right now intentionally. We're changing the way that we're shipping product to mitigate risk so we don't have another February happening again with our shipping partners. We're doing a lot of things that I didn't want to do because I really liked that we could create this like product that was always a 10. It was like super designed. And so we're going away from that model because we can't be profitable that way. With all this outside risk that's impacting us that we found out this year. And so I'm really excited that once we do all these really hard things that are excruciatingly hard, when we get to the other side, it feels like I'm building another startup from scratch again. And if I were starting Farmgirl back in 2010, I wish I would have started it, if I was doing it again, I wish I would have started it the way that I'm now creating the company to be. And, I'm telling my team, we're calling it Farmgirl 5.0 because it's our 5th major pivot, like major pivot, and feels like a whole nother company. But once we do it, it's going to work much better for us. And so I'm really excited to get to the other side of it and build it the way that I should have built it years ago, but I didn't want to because I didn't want to make us, even 1% more generic or something like that. And I didn't make the right decisions for the company then, and I am now. And I've gotten my ego out of it. I've gotten all the things that are not healthy to have in it. And I'm excited for the company will be on the other side.
Amazing. Well, for anyone listening, anything we can do to help in your mission, your goal this year?
Thank you. Clearco, I mean, I'm not saying this. It sounds like I'm being like I'm paid to say this or something. I'm not. Like, Clearco has literally been the only financial partner that has helped us. I mean, I've tried multiple times to get a loan even, and the way the banks are set up, from like the 1980s or something, you have to have like these big purchase orders from like Walmart or something. And if you're like a B2C, it just doesn't work like that. Right. And so you can't take like, here's my projections. We hit them every year. And they're like, so what? You might not this year, and it's too high risk. And so, this summer being so challenging, like I just said, like I didn't know what I was going to do. And, Clearco came through in a really big way. And so I'm the biggest proponent, most vocal proponent for Clearco. And I just really appreciate you guys, what you do for businesses like us that are unfundable pretty much. And, banks won't also believe in us as well. So there's really no other option for companies like us when you hit a patch where like people are traveling instead of buying flowers, and you just need a couple months to help you get through till, it's going to come back, So thank you.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. Everyone who's watching, please check out farmgirlflowers.com and check out I realized when you were talking through all these things, I'm like, yeah, I don't remember seeing all those different things on the site last time we talked.
Yeah.
So if you really want to see an entrepreneur operate in real time and see all these ideas come into fruition, I certainly encourage you guys to follow Farmgirl Flowers, to follow Christina, And we couldn't be prouder to have you as part of our portfolio and family here at Clear Coast. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's been wonderful talking to you as always.
Amazing. Thank you.